There was a large table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were resting their elbows on it. They were all crowded together at the corner of the table.
No room, no room, no room.
There's plenty of room,
said Alice, and sat down in an armchair next to the March Hare. He looked at her and said in an encouraging tone,
"Have some wine."
I don't see any wine.
There isn't any.
Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it.
It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited.
I didn't know it was your table. It's laid for a great many more than 3.
The Hatter looked at Alice for some time with great curiosity, then took a watch out of his pocket, shook it, and held it to his ear.
What day of the month is it?
The 4th.
Oh, 2 days wrong. I told you butter wouldn't suit the works, March Hare.
It was the best butter.
Yes, but some crumbs must have got in as well. You shouldn't have put it in with a bread knife.
The March Hare took the watch, looked at it gloomily, then dipped it into his cup of tea and looked at it again.
What a funny watch. It tells the day of the month and not what time it is.
Why should it? Does your watch tell you what year it is?
Of course not, but that's because it stays the same year for such a long time together.
Which is just the case with mine. Anyway, if you knew time as well as I do, you wouldn't talk about time as it. It's him.
I don't know what you mean.
Of course you don't. I dare say you never even spoke to time.
Well, perhaps not, but I know I have to beat time when I learn music.
Ah, that accounts for it. He won't stand beating. Now, I quarrelled with time last March. It was at the great concert given by the Queen of Hearts, and I had to sing. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder what you're at. Up above the world you fly, like a tea tray in the sky. Twinkle, 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 twinkle. Well, I'd hardly finished the first verse when the Queen jumped up and bawled out, "He's murdering the time, off with his head." And ever since that, time won't do a thing I ask him. It's always 6 o'clock now.
Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here?
Yes, that's it. It's always tea time, and we've no time to wash the things between whiles.
Then you keep moving round, I suppose.
Exactly so, as the things get used up.
I'm getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tells us a story.
I'm afraid I don't know one.
Then the Dormouse
Dormouse
shall.
shall.
Wake up, Dormouse, and tell us the story, and be quick about it, or you'll be asleep again before it's done.
Once upon a time, there were 3 little sisters, and their names were Elsie, Lacey, and Tilly, and they lived at the bottom of a well.
What did they live on?
They lived on treacle.
They couldn't have done that, you know. They'd have been ill.
So they were, very ill.
But why did they live at the bottom of a well?
It was a treacle well.
There's no such thing.
Quiet, quiet.
And so these 3 little sisters, they were learning to draw, you know.
What did they draw?
Treacle.
But I don't understand. Where did they draw the treacle from?
You can draw water out of a water well, so I should think you could draw treacle out of a treacle well. Eh, stupid?
But they were in the well.
Of course they were. Well in. Oh, they were learning to draw, and they drew all manner of things, beginning with an M, such as mouse traps, and the moon, and muchness. Oh, you know you'll say things are much of a muchness. Did you ever see such a thing as a drawing of a muchness?
I don't think
Then you shouldn't talk.
This piece of rudeness was more than Alice could bear. She got up in great disgust and walked off into the wood. The Dormouse fell asleep instantly, and when Alice looked back, the other 2 were trying to put it into the teapot. As Alice was picking her way through the wood, she noticed that one of the trees had a door leading right into it. She thought this very curious, and went in to have a look. Once more she found herself in the long hall where she had wept the pool of tears. The glass table was there too, and on it lay the tiny golden key. She took it and unlocked the little door that led into the garden. Then she set to work nibbling at the mushroom till she was about a foot high. She walked down the little passage, and then she found herself in the beautiful garden among the bright flowers and the cool fountains. A large rose tree stood near the entrance of the garden. The roses on it were white, but there were 3 gardeners, all looking like playing cards, oblong and flat, with hands and feet at their corners, busily painting them red. They told Alice that the Queen of Hearts had ordered a red rose tree, but they had planted a white one, and were now trying to cover up their mistake. Just then one of the gardeners shouted,
"The Queen! The Queen!"
and the 3 of them instantly threw themselves flat upon their faces. Alice turned round and saw a grand procession approaching. First came 10 soldiers carrying clubs, next 10 courtiers ornamented with diamonds. After these came the 10 royal children, all ornamented with red hearts. Next came the guests, mostly kings and queens, and among them Alice recognized the White Rabbit. Then followed the Knave of Hearts, carrying the king's crown on a velvet cushion. And last of all came the King and Queen of Hearts. When the procession came opposite to Alice, they all stopped, and the Queen said severely,
"What's your name, child?"
My name is Alice, so please your majesty. Why, they're only a pack of cards after all. I needn't be afraid of them.
"And who are these lying on the ground?"
How should I know? It's no business of mine.
"Off with her head, off!"
Nonsense!
"Turn them over."
The Knave of Hearts turned over the gardeners. When the Queen discovered what they had been up to, she shouted,
"Off with their heads!"
The procession moved on. Alice quickly hid the gardeners in a large flower pot. 3 soldiers remained behind looking for them, but when they couldn't find them, they quietly marched off after the others.
"Are their heads off?"
"Their heads are gone, if it please your majesty."
"That's right. Can you play croquet, child?"
Yes!
"Come on, then. Get to your places. Off we go."
People began running about in all directions. Alice thought she had never seen such a curious croquet ground in all her life. The soldiers doubled themselves up to make the arches. Alice was given a live hedgehog as a ball and a flamingo as her mallet. She had great difficulty in managing her flamingo, and by the time she had straightened it out, the hedgehog was about to crawl away. The players all played at once without waiting for turns, quarrelling all the time and fighting with the hedgehogs, while the Queen was stamping about and shouting,
"Off with his head! Off with her head!"
Presently, the Duchess arrived.
"You can't think how glad I am to see you again, you dear old thing,"
said the Duchess as she tucked her arm affectionately into Alice's, and they walked off together. Alice was very glad to find her in such a pleasant temper, and she was just thinking to herself that perhaps it was only the pepper that had made her so savage in the kitchen, when she heard her voice close to her ear.
"You're thinking about something, my dear, and that makes you forget to talk. I can't tell you just now what the moral of that is, but I shall remember it in a bit."
Perhaps it hasn't one.
"Tut, tut, child, everything's got a moral, if you can only find it."
The game seems to be going on rather better now.
"'Tis so, and the moral of that is, oh, 'tis love that makes the world go round."
Somebody said that it's done by everybody minding their own business.
Ah, well, it means much the same thing, and the moral of that is, oh, the Queen. A fine day, your majesty.
"Now I give you fair warning. Either you or your head must be off, and that in about half no time. Take your choice."
The Duchess took her choice and was gone in a moment.
"Have you seen the Mock Turtle yet?"
No, I don't even know what a mock turtle is.
"It's the thing Mock Turtle soup is made from. Come on, and he shall tell you his story."
The Queen took Alice to a strange-looking beast, half lion, half eagle, which was lying fast asleep in the sun.
"Up, Griffin! Up, lazy thing! And take that young lady to see the Mock Turtle. I must go back and see after some executions I've ordered."
When the Queen was out of sight, the Griffin laughed and told Alice that it was all the Queen's fancy and that nobody was ever executed. He took Alice to the Mock Turtle, who agreed to tell his story, but he was so sad and sorry for himself that it took a long time before he began.
Once I was a real turtle. When we were little, we went to school in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise.
Why did you call him Tortoise if he wasn't one?
We called him Tortoise because he taught us. Really, you are very dull.
The Mock Turtle then told Alice that he used to have lessons in ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision, reeling and writhing, seaography, and drawling, and then proceeded with tears in his eyes to talk about games. In order to show Alice what one of them was like, he took the Gryphon as partner and began to prance about solemnly, dancing a curious dance which he called the Lobster Quadrille. The Mock Turtle himself provided the necessary music by singing a sad and mournful tune.
Will you walk a little faster, said a whiting to a snail. There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? You can really have no notion how delightful it will be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea. But the snail replied too far, and gave a look and scorns. Said he thanked the whiting kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not, would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not join the dance. What matters it how far we go? His scaly friend replied. There is another shore, you know, upon the other side. The further off from England, the nearer is to France. Then turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you join the dance?
Alice thanked the Mock Turtle and the Gryphon for the performance, but soon they started arguing with her and asking silly questions, so that Alice was quite relieved when the Mock Turtle offered to sing another song.
Beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen.
As he began, someone shouted in the distance,
The trial's beginning.
The Gryphon took Alice by the hand and hurried off with her, while more and more faintly came, carried on the breeze that followed them, the sad voice of the Mock Turtle.
Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful soup. Beautiful, beautiful soup. Beautiful, beautiful soup.
The trial was about to start, and the King and Queen of Hearts were seated on their throne when the Gryphon and Alice arrived. There were all sorts of little birds and animals in the court of justice, as well as the whole pack of cards. The knave was in chains with a soldier on each side to guard him, and near the king stood the white rabbit, with a trumpet in one hand and a scroll of parchment in the other. In the very middle of the court was a table with a large dish of tarts upon it. They looked so good that it made Alice quite hungry to look at them, but the tarts were to play an important part in the trial and were not to be eaten. The king was also the judge and wore a great wig under his crown. The white rabbit cried out,
Silence! Silence in court.
Herald, read the accusation,
said the king.
The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts, all on a summer day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts and took them quite away.
Consider your verdict.
Not yet, not yet. There's a great deal to come before that.
Call the first witness.
First witness.
The first witness was the hatter. He came in with a teacup in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other.
I beg pardon, Your Majesty, but I hadn't quite finished my tea when I was sent for.
You ought to have finished. Take off your hat.
It isn't mine.
Stolen!
I keep them to sell. I've none of my own. I'm a hatter.
Give your evidence and don't be nervous, or I'll have you executed on the spot.
I'm a poor man, Your Majesty, and I hadn't begun my tea. And what with the bread and butter getting so thin, and the dormouse said...
What did the dormouse say?
I can't remember.
You must remember, or I'll have you executed.
I'm a poor man, Your Majesty.
You're a very poor speaker. And if that's all you know, you may go.
And just take his head off outside.
While the hatter was being questioned, Alice felt that she was growing again, and quite rapidly at that. At first she wanted to get up and leave, but on second thoughts, she decided to remain where she was as long as there was room for her. The Duchess's cook was the next witness.
Give your evidence.
Shan't. Your Majesty must cross-examine this witness.
Well, if I must, I must. What are tarts made of?
Pepper, mostly.
Treacle, said the dormouse.
Collar that dormouse. Behead that dormouse. Off with his whiskers.
Silence! Silence! Call the next witness.
Next witness, Alice.
Here,
She quite forgot how large she had grown, and she jumped up in such a hurry that she tipped over the jury box with the edge of her skirt, upsetting the little creatures who were the jurymen onto the heads of the crowd below.
The trial cannot proceed until all the jurymen are back in their proper places. Silence! Rule 42. All persons more than a mile high to leave the court.
I'm not a mile high.
You are.
Nearly 2 miles high.
Well, I shan't go. Besides, you invented that rule just now.
It's the oldest rule in the book.
Then it ought to be number 1.
The king turned pale and said in a low, trembling voice,
Consider your verdict.
There's more evidence to come yet. This paper has just been picked up. It contains the following verses. They told me you had been to her and mentioned me to him, and gave me a good character, but said I couldn't swim. I gave her 1, they gave him 2, you gave us 3 or more. They all returned from him to you, though they were mine before.
That's the most important piece of evidence we've had yet. So now let the jury consider
If
their...
any one of them can explain this poem, I'll give him 6pence. I don't believe there's an atom of meaning in it.
She had grown so large in the last few minutes that she wasn't a bit afraid of interrupting him.
If there's no meaning in it, that saves a world of trouble. And yet I don't know. I seem to see some meaning in it after all. For instance, said I couldn't swim. The knave can't swim, and that's certain. I gave her 1, they gave him 2. Why, that must be what he did with the tarts, you know.
But it goes on. They all returned from him to you.
Why, there are the tarts right there on that table. Nothing can be clearer than that. Let the jury consider their verdict.
No. Sentence first, verdict afterwards.
Stuff and nonsense. The idea of having the sentence first.
Hold your tongue.
I won't.
Off with her head.
Who cares for you? You're nothing but a pack of cards.
And though Alice had grown to her full size by this time, she gave a little scream, half of fright, half of anger, when the whole pack rose into the air and came flying down upon her. She fought and struggled and tried to beat them off. And then she found herself lying on the bank, with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing away some dead leaves that had fluttered down from the trees upon her face.
Wake up, Alice dear. Why, what a long sleep you've had.
Oh, I had such a curious dream.
And she told her sister, as well as she could remember them, all these strange adventures of hers that you have just been hearing about.